Thank you everybody for coming to our event. It's really exciting to see all of you here. My name is Noel Benjaloon. I'm a senior on the Dean's Student Advisory Council, and I'm doing a major in philosophy with a concentration in law and justice, alongside a minor in global entrepreneurship. I'll pass it off to you.
Hi, I'm Kiara Sotio. I'm a freshman in the Lee Business School with a minor, like Noor, in the entrepreneurship experience. And I will be the first person in my family to attend, to gain my bachelor's degree in the United States.
Oh, congratulations.
So I'll pass it off to our panelists so that they can introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Shane Jasmine Young. I am an attorney here in Las Vegas. I also own my own law firm called Young Law Group. I grew up here in Las Vegas and married my high school sweetheart. We were just talking about this. He went to Eldorado. I went to Green Valley, so go Gators. For undergrad, I went to Pepperdine in Malibu, California. I graduated in 3 years with my bachelor's degree, magna cum laude. I studied business there. That was perfect timing because I was actually pregnant at the time. That was not part of my plan, but I was pregnant with twins at the time. And so our twins are now 22 years old. And we came back to Las Vegas. I went to the law school here, right across the way. Actually started my first year at the Paradise location. So I don't know if you guys know that the law school started there before this lovely building was put in place. And I graduated from law school and went to work for, like the big fancy firm. I was with the big firm for about 10 years. And then I went in-house. I was the general counsel for a financial services company. Their office had about 60 people here in Las Vegas, did that for a couple of years. And then in 2015, I started my own firm, which was really, really scary. It came actually as a result of being laid off from my job. So I can share more about, that journey based on the questions that you guys have for me. But after starting my own firm, I started with no clients. Basically, it was just me trying to figure things out. My practice has now grown to, we probably have thousands of clients now. And I focus primarily on estate planning. So things like wills and trusts and asset protection. So we're going to be talking about that, which is really important that you guys learn some of these things right now so that you can put them into place. Because there's so much information that I wish I would have had, at the phase of life that you were all in. So I'll share some of those things with you, but we do estate planning and we do business and also personal injury. So like car accidents, that type of thing. And my law firm now we've grown to about 15 employees, and we've been voted Best of Las Vegas in multiple categories. The results for 2022 haven't been released yet. That'll be coming in a few weeks. But as of now, we're 14-time Best of Las Vegas winners. So,
wow.
Yeah,
Congrats.
Thank you.
I don't know how I followed that up, to be honest. My name is Jake Gallen, also from Las Vegas. Grew up on the east side, went to Chaparral High School. Graduated from here in 2015. It's crazy, that was 7 years ago. Graduated with a degree in kinesiology. I was part of the AE Pipe fraternity. Had a really, really good time on campus. Since then, I've kind of been all over the place. I worked on the Strip for 10 years. I worked in the nightclub industry for 5 years at Omnia Nightclub as a busser. Owned an antique store. I owned a crypto consultation firm. What else did I do? I created a ticket app called Chameleon Verify. All those are closed down now. And I now work for a crypto company called Emblem Vault. I hang out in the NFT world and I have a podcast. It was first called The Guest List, which talked with entrepreneurs in Las Vegas. That blew up during COVID, and now it just focuses on NFTs. But that gave me the power as an entrepreneur to network with really cool individuals across the city and kind of build my own path. I realized when I was on campus that the path to generational wealth was not linearly, which is kind of what my college degree was projecting me to do. So I decided to do the complete opposite, as most Vegas people tend to do. And it's been a crazy, wild ride, but very, very fun. So yeah, and I just hang out mostly in the content world and crypto.
My name is Devan Wyon. I also was born here. My grandmother was brought here when she was a teenager, so I might be as native as they come. I'm also a Gator.
Yeah.
I was a student at UNLV for about 20 minutes until I took an emergency job with my dad up in St. George, and I had to transfer my credits. I ended up graduating online at a university that I've never been to. It's called Regis. It's somewhere in Denver, but it works. From there, I went on to financial services. I'm a certified financial planner, and I practiced here in Vegas in personal wealth management for about 15 years. I've obtained my master's in financial planning from the American College, and up until June of COVID, that's just what 2020 is called, the COVID year. I was a slave to the man and worked for banks and sold financial products, and I was lifeless. And during COVID, I quit my job. I walked away from about an $80 million book of business. I sold both my rental properties, and I started a business in an industry that does not exist. And I had what I thought was a near-death experience that prompted that, which we can talk about a little bit later probably. But my company that I started provides financial advice to employees for a monthly cost to the employer, kind of like a nursing hotline works, except we don't sell any products at all, which is kind of crazy because if you know anything about financial services, and fundamentally, it's a great career. You can make a whole lot of money selling financial products. And so I think that model is terrible for the average person. It doesn't work for the vast majority of Americans, and it's the reason why most Americans are behind financially. And so on top of hoping to change the industry and build some wealth for myself, I'm trying to change how people view financial services and give people a way to get good advice without being stuck behind a conflict of interest or a sales pitch that they're just waiting to happen. So I'm married, I have 4 little babies, and we've been operating for about 18 months. So that's me.
Congrats.
Okay, thank you. So our first question for you is, what inspired you to go down the route that you did?
Who do you want to start?
We can go on
With me. So what inspired me to go down the route that I went on? So when I mentioned that I grew up here in Las Vegas, and the reason why we moved here was actually because my dad was an entrepreneur, but he moved here for a job. And so after a couple of years, he started his own business. It was an airline. And he hired an attorney to help him, get everything together. He purchased airplanes. This airline was in operations in the 1990s. It was called TriStar Airlines. And unfortunately, this attorney, with the help of some other third parties, took advantage of my dad and completely pushed him out of control of his own business. And we lost everything. They actually ran it into bankruptcy. So as you can imagine, that was devastating to my family, to us, emotionally, financially. My dad really has never been the same since that happened. And he hired another attorney, a local attorney, which was much better than that first attorney. And they filed a malpractice lawsuit against that law firm and some other claims that were alleged. That lawsuit started when I was in middle school, and then it lasted all the way until I was a sophomore in college. And one of the values that my dad instilled in me was education, and not just a formal college education, although that was definitely a push. But it was just being able to make informed decisions and being empowered to really set your own path and do what makes you happy, what you want, what will fulfill you, and be protected. So I was one of those kids that had to get straight A's. And so all through school, I graduated as a valedictorian from high school. College was very similar. I mean, I got a couple B's. But even when I was in college, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, which path I wanted to go on. And many of you might be kind of trying to figure that out too. And it's okay if you don't have the answer, just so you know. But one of the things that my dad had always said was go to law school, because then you'll be able to know, all of these things, even if you don't become a lawyer, you can still use it. You can still do business. You can still do anything else, really. So my grandmother actually died the year that I graduated from college. And one of the promises that I made to her after she found out I was pregnant and everyone thought that the world was going to end and I was never going to be able to go to school and do all the things that I wanted to do, she had me promise that I would go back to school, whether it was law school or something else, and really continue on my path. So I did that. I actually came back home. Both my husband and I came back here to Las Vegas, and I started law school on my twins' first birthday. And even when I was going to law school, I still didn't really know, what that was going to lead to. It was kind of like, you just allow yourself to be guided sometimes, by faith, or if you believe in a higher being or God, whatever it is. I feel like I've always been kind of guided through life. And even when I've set my intention or a plan to do something, I've learned that I need to be adaptable and be flexible, because things are going to change and things don't always work out according to plan. So just long story short, to answer your question, what initially inspired me was just seeing my dad go through that experience and me wanting to be able to avoid that for myself and my family, but also to be able to help others and really set my family and future generations up for success.
Yeah, things really never do go to plan,
right?
Especially as an entrepreneur. So what was the question? What
inspired you?
What inspired you to go down the route that you did?
Yeah, I have to say, growing up on the east side. Is there anybody here who grew up on the east side of Las Vegas by chance? Yeah, so when you grow up on the east side, you know that it's kind of a impoverished area. The education rate is really low. When I went to Shapter, the graduation rate was 51%. And to me, it just realized that these students who were getting bad grades, they were still finding success in their own way. They were creating side jobs. They were just finding ways to survive. And to me, it made me realize that life's more about just getting grades. I did graduate with like a 4.2, and then I came to college, graduated with a 2.2. But I started majoring in kinesiology, and within, say, a year and a half, I realized it's not something that I wanted to do professionally, but it was something that I could do practically. And so I kind of just have like a different view of what college was. I realized that the people that you meet in college, the relationships that you build, and the network that you could create, especially out here in Las Vegas, which is a town that's built off of networking, will take you much farther than your education. Of course, it's different for everybody depending on what your education you're getting in. And so I kind of just like took that to heart with the fraternity, and kind of just wanted to carve out my own path. And my goal was to just always meet somebody new every day on campus. So I was always hanging out in the student union, trying to meet somebody new. And then when you work or when you grow up in Las Vegas, you realize, yes, it's bottom in education, but there's a ton of entrepreneurs out here. It has a very, very stout hustle culture. There's a lot of individuals who get a GED and then go work on the strip and make, 6 figures doing whatever their job is, and then go build a business after that. And to me, that always seemed like the fastest path, as the, the integrity of college for some people in some professions was not the right suit. I realized that it was more about meeting individuals. And so that kind of inspired me from the starting in the lower class of the East Side and at Chaparral, and coming and learning from all the different individuals, that no matter what you do, no matter what you're studying, or no matter what practice that you engage in, as long as you can take some skills and learn from that and apply it to whatever you do in the future, that'll find success. And it takes a long time to do that. After starting 4 to 5 different businesses, I'm still on that path, but you set goals very young, and you try to just inspire everyone that was around you, who maybe didn't get to make it. They get to live vicariously through you. So that's kind of what inspired me.
So for me, I had, when I was in school, particularly middle school and high school, and maybe you had the same experience, I noticed that the way that my teachers would teach was not effective. And it really bothered me, because we would sit in class and the teachers would try to give us a lesson. And I would think, the way that you explain that doesn't work really well, or your energy is not there. You're not holding my attention. Something, it wasn't right. And I kept thinking to myself, if I taught this class, all the students would be way into it. Like, you guys would listen to me and learn, and it would be great. And so I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up. And then I grew up and learned about how much teachers don't make. My love for educating was coupled with my deep and abiding love for money. I love money so much, not just having it, but how it works, identifying the function of it. The idea that a piece of paper can have value to someone that you don't even know. And when I was a kid, I used to wash my money. I used to get dollar bills and clean them and smell them. I love how money smells. And so
Not money laundering though.
No.
It's a different form of washing.
Different.
Yeah. Or my mom had these chore charts that she would make for us, where it was just a matrix of every possible chore that was in the house, and then 5 cents, 10 cents, 5 cents, 25 cents. And I was like addicted to it, where I would try to do as many as I could, and I would put all my money in a Jif peanut butter jar, and I would just look at it like Uncle Scrooge. And so my father, who didn't raise me, he lives up in St. George. He became a financial planner as well. And I would go to his seminars and I would watch him get up in front of these groups of people and teach people about money. And money happens to be one of those things that everybody deals with, but nobody knows how it works. And so I saw a really strong opportunity here to learn how something that is apparently complicated works, that's in high demand, and teach people about it. So I was able to marry my ideas of being an educator with my abiding infatuation with money. And that's how I got started on the financial planning route. It wasn't until I got really, really sick in 2020 that I realized that, and you'll all have a moment like this at some point, whether it's you or someone that you know, where you actually realize that life is temporary. And that's something that, when you're growing up as a kid, you think that the world is ahead of you. But if you had a tragedy early in your life, you know that it's not. And if you ever have an issue with your health where you think that you're not going to make it, you start to think about conversations you're going to have with your family members, with your kids. And then you think about, what have I done with my life? I mean, that type of stuff will make you look in the mirror. And so that's when I decided to throw the whole thing out the window. I had a really good job. I made a lot of money. I didn't work very hard at all. It was all just brain power. And if you know how something works, people will pay you a lot for it. But I was just, at the end of the day, making a bank rich. And so that's why I decided to quit. And we'll talk about my entrepreneurship in a later question. But basically just my love for teaching, my love for money, and now my love for freedom and creating something great that will change people's lives and last.
Thank you for all those great answers. I do have another question. So I feel like one thing that we all struggle with, whether that's in college or whether that's later on down in the line in our career, would be imposter syndrome, whether it's in the workforce or whether it's within our classes. So my question to each of you is, do you or have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you deal with it and how did you cope with it to get from college to the point you're at today in your life?
That's a good question.
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, you generally face imposter syndrome no matter what you're beginning in. It does get easier over time. I think the best way to combat it is kind of the idea of fake it till you make it, which is kind of cliche. The example I use a lot is when I started my podcast, when the pandemic happened, the Strip closed down, and I was sitting around trying to decide what to do. I identified a problem that there weren't any interview-like podcasts in the city. And so I just started it. And when you go back to that very first episode, it is awful. I'm almost embarrassed to have it up there. It's terrible. But now 250 episodes later, I look at it and I still think it's awful, but you've grown to that. You faked it till you made it. And at this point in time, I realized that journey, what is it? It's like purpose is how you see journey, but success is how others view your journey. I realized at different points throughout my podcast career that whether it was episode 5, episode 10, episode 100, different people who watched it identified success through their own lens. When I started episode 5, a lot of people thought it was a success because I was courageous. I put myself out there. Even when my grammatical skills were terrible, conversational skills, a lot of people thought that was something of success. And now going 250 episodes later, there's a bunch of people out there who think it's awful, right? People think that I'm still faking it till I make it. And that was a big a realization for me, more of an epiphany, like that no matter what you're doing, you're going to have haters, you're going to have imposter syndrome. But as long as you just keep getting at it, you will get better over time. Everyone becomes an expertise through a different amount of hours that they put in. Some people it takes 5 hours, some people it take 5,000 hours, but as long as you remain in that industry and you have confidence and grit and refuse to give up, then you'll make it.
Yeah, so I have really strong opinions on this. I'm going to sound like a boomer, but social media is the freaking worst, right? and I think we all know it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're like, what am I doing? But one of the reasons that social media is so dangerous and bad is because you've heard this, you see everybody else's highlight reel and you compare it to your worst days, right? And that makes you feel like you're inadequate. Like, why aren't my days looking like so-and-so's days? Well, that's because they've edited their days and given you just a small bit. And that's what happens with imposter syndrome is when you see other people operating in their own respective fields, you're seeing them like performing super well. And you're thinking, gosh, I'm so insecure in myself. But that's not the case. Gosh, when I was a kid, my mom tried so hard to make me believe that adults were like this grand thing that you graduated and then suddenly you were smart. And that is so false. I mean, adults are just big kids trying to figure it out. You are so much better than you think you are. And if you compare yourself in your head, when you think about how much you think you don't know to what everyone else appears, how much they appear they know, you're going to lose every time. But you are so much smarter and so much better and so much harder working than you think that you are. And so one of the best ways to combat imposter syndrome is to be around your contemporaries and see them when it's not their highlight reel. What I remember so vividly, I was at MetLife as a little insurance agent, starving to death, studying for the CFP exam. And some guy called in and had this really complicated tax question. And I had just read the book on taxes, so I was ready for this. And I said, sir, I've got the answer for you. Let me get a pen. We're going to go through this together. And he said, listen, is there someone that's a little bit older than I still look like a 16-year-old kid. That's why I have this stupid goatee. I went down the hallway to one of the senior advisors there, and I used advisors in quotes. And I said, someone's on the phone. They have a tax question for you. So I went back to my desk. About 11 seconds later, that same seasoned advisor came back to my desk to ask me the tax question. I gave him the answer, and he gave the answer to the guy on the phone. And in that moment, and I've had this happen 100 times, I realized that it's fake. This guy just has gray hair and a suit and a BMW, and everyone thinks that he's the man. But he came to me for the tax answer. So I promise you, if you are around people that are your contemporaries, you will see that a lot of what you see with your eyes is just like social media. It's got a filter over it, and it was the 38th picture that they took that day. It's fake. You are so much better than you are. Just stick it out and push and push and push. Treat life like golf. Work against yourself. Try to make yourself better. Everybody else doesn't matter. But if you spend time with your contemporaries, you will see that you're better than you think you are.
And I'm going to piggyback off of what my colleagues just talked about. But it's funny, Devan, that you mentioned your example of when you were a younger, newer professional. And basically, it's kind of the same, like working in a law firm. It's like the big partners, the big time lawyers that are the ones that are presumed to know everything. And I think that that's something that in my profession especially, but probably in each of yours as well, we're expected to know everything. Or we put that pressure on ourselves. And so kind of the flip side of what Devan just shared is now being basically the partner of my firm, I rely on the junior associates, the younger ones to tell me what the answers are, because now my focus has shifted into a different space. So I'm not so keyed into the law and all of the statutes and all of the things. I know, more generally. And even for me, that's hard for me because it's still part of that syndrome, I think, that I carry with me. And I think that it might just be part of, who I am forever, where I'm constantly feeling like, I've got to know all the things. And what I've had to try to remind myself and teach myself is that there's no way that I'm going to know everything. And many times people will respect you saying, hey, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find out. So that is one thing that I am so good at. And if you're not good at this yet, this is a good skill to have with you, like keep in your pocket, is knowing how to research, how to find the answers and information, because my memory, I'm getting older, and, I don't remember everything. Like I probably forgot more than I'll ever know, in the future at this point. But I think just being comfortable in that, and I have to constantly remind myself, because it's easy to get back into that pattern of even, I met with a client yesterday. He had $100 million estate. And typically the planning that I do with clients is not that high net worth. They're, more just kind of everyday planning, but we do planning for all types of wealth levels, asset levels, and different dynamics. But there were questions that he had that I didn't know, or one in particular that I didn't know the answer to offhand. Well, I know how to get it, but I had to, in that moment, be honest. And I think that that's also where kind of we balance that imposter syndrome, is really just being real. And being real with ourselves. We were talking about social media and these expectations or these visions of perceptions that people have. And one of the reasons that I've been able to build my business and build connections and relationships in the community and otherwise is because I try not to be fake. I try to really be real and be authentic and share things about my life that, aren't always peaches and cream. But on my social media, most of the stuff that you see is fun, nice, beautiful stuff. So I'm constantly having to remind people and friends and colleagues. I have a group called Women Decision Makers, and some of you have been to that before. So we do a breakfast every other month, and it's focused on women, all different types of women in the community. So there's business owners, entrepreneurs, different types of professionals, all types of professionals, some stay-at-home moms, some are students. So all of you ladies are welcome, and guys, if you would like to join us, you're welcome to. I'm not going to tell you no. But a lot of the women there look to me and they see like, oh, she's a lawyer and she's a business owner and she's a mom and she's a wife, and I'm not a mom and I'm not a wife, or I'm not this and I'm not that. And I have to constantly remind them, like, you are your own person and you have your own gifts. We all have our own gifts. I don't have the financial and money sense, that you have. I don't have, probably some of the charismatic and personality and outgoing things, that you offer, and just like the knowledge that you have. So it's really about keying into who you are and being true to that. And I try to balance, the perception with like doses of like reality. If you end up following me on social media, you'll see some of that.
Thank you all for those great answers and stories. So like you all just discussed, imposter syndrome is a big challenge that many people face. So that leads me to my next question. What were some of the challenges that you have encountered?
I guess I'll start. Yeah. I printed up these questions. It might be like a debate where we have like our podiums and things. So being in financial services, the biggest concern is having an uncertain income. And that's something that a lot of people, if you become an entrepreneur, you're going to experience. And so that's what they tell you. If you listen to like Dana White or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos talk about entrepreneurship, one of the things they'll talk about is to do it when you're young. If you're going to do it when you're young. Do it when you can afford to drown. Because if you get a mortgage and you get married and you get kids, then it becomes very, very difficult. Not impossible, as I'm standing here today. Not impossible, but very difficult when you have other obligations. But being in a position where your income was based on your ability to produce was remarkably challenging. I remember vividly my paycheck. I wish I would have saved it. It was $108. I remember getting that paycheck. And I went in the bathroom. I was a young married kid. I had convinced my wife that I was some kind of financial guru, right? And that's why she married me, way outside my league, right? And I went in the bathroom and I closed the door and I looked in the mirror and I thought about my $108 check. For a week of my labor, that's what I was compensated. And I thought, is this for me? Is this what I'm going to do? Going to be in this world where my production determines my income? And that's where I really turned it around. So having the ability to produce your own income is a blessing, but there's a big challenge when you start, because It's not like you clock in at Best Buy and they're paying you for your time, right? You can't, go to the bathroom and forget to clock out and you're sitting on your phone getting paid. I know that game. When you're an entrepreneur, it's you eat what you kill. Another humongous challenge that I had, obviously, is that I look like a child. And nobody wants to give their money to someone who looks like a child. So I overcame that in a lot of ridiculous, superficial ways. I bought a bunch of suits. I bought a stupid Mercedes. I have glasses that don't have any prescription. They're just glass. But 36% of Americans think you're smarter if you wear glasses. And so I was going to play that. I bought a nice watch. I would do such stupid things. I would go through the newspaper, and if I found a word I didn't know what it was, I would write it on a pad of paper and define it. And then I would try to use it. Be like, I'm going to use the word surreptitious in a sentence. And I do all the time. I say acquiesce or ubiquitous, because I wanted to sound like I was better than I was. At the time, I was not very good. So I don't know if that's imposter syndrome or not. That's really just faking it, right? But at some point, you don't have to do those things because it becomes who you are. But so those would be my biggest two challenges: is finding my life and the fact that I, get caught.
That's right. Oh man, what challenges! Pretty much. So I talk about this kind of a lot on when I'm going out in public speaking. I kind of have these 4 different pillars to my life of the 4 biggest challenges that I've faced, and they've all come within different periods of my life. And I didn't even realize that I was combating these issues until after I had passed that hurdle. When I was younger, I was a very big kid, had long hair, a lot of health issues. Joined football, did track in high school, and helped me overcome health issues. Became fit, and that's what helped me or propelled me to do kinesiology in college. And then when I was in college, I joined API fraternity. I was always confident, but I didn't really have the right social skills to get what I needed, to build relationships. I would just go in there and be a fool. And so the fraternity really helped me understand networking, social skills, confidence, and everything that comes into the social realm. And then when I was in college and I was a big party kid, surprise, surprise, I kind of lacked the spirituality to me. I was very abrasive, kind of crude, wasn't really freeing. And I started going to raves and music festivals, and that was like a very spiritually freeing experience for me. And then the last pillar was financial capital. My entire life, I faced capital constraints, grew up on free lunch, under the poverty line, had the same clothes pretty much my entire elementary, middle school, and high school career. Worked on the strip, worked my way up from a lifeguard, which is generally what most people did, all the way up into the nightclub industry, and that kind of freed me from the capital constraints, and that's what helped me start building businesses. But the whole point here is that there's a lot of issues you're going to face in life. Sometimes you won't realize it until after you pass that hurdle, and then you look back on the journey and be like, wow, I can't believe that I overcame that issue. Like that issue had faced me my entire life. And now I'm finally past it. So it's important to identify the issues, but then also give yourself credit once you're able to overcome them.
Good stuff. So when I was in high school, I mentioned that I met my husband. So I was a sophomore and he was a junior, and we met at a track meet. And I used to run hurdles. So I always take like the visual back to like those days. So in high school, how hard really is your life, right? But that was a challenge for me. So I remember running, my race mainly was the 300-meter hurdle. So it's like it's 3/4 around the track. So by the time you get to that last stretch, and it's not just running, of course, right? Like you have to actually clear these hurdles. I remember just like what I would be telling myself at those times. And I learned from a really young age that what you tell yourself is so, so powerful. Because if you have a negative mindset or negative self-talk, that is the biggest challenge that anyone could ever put before you. right? Because forget about what anybody else says about you. There's always going to be people that don't like you, haters, they're going to talk about you, whatever. There's always going to be people, those people out there. But when it comes to yourself, is like really learning how important it is to speak to yourself in a way that is positive, that is uplifting, that is encouraging, that is loving. And again, even today, I have to remind myself to do that. You know, it's easy to fall into, you just messed that up, or, oh, you should have done this differently, or whatever it is. And one of the things that I teach my daughters, so all of my daughters are athletes also. So I have 5 daughters, by the way.
Wow.
So my twins are 22, and hopefully they'll be going to law school next year. They're graduating this year. They play basketball in college. I also played basketball. And my younger 3 are in middle school and elementary school. So what we say in our house is next play. Like, look, you're going to make a mistake. And next play is something that we would teach our kids or students, athletes in basketball, meaning that if you mess up on a play in basketball, don't dwell on it. Get back in the play. Get back on defense. You blew a layup. Who cares? Get on defense. Don't solo. So that's one of the things that I think is really important is a strong mindset. And it's not easy. You know, it's difficult. It's a constant thing that you've got to work on to be in the right mode, or whatever, you know, means or modality that you're using to be able to achieve what it is that you're looking for.
So I have a follow-up question on those notes based off of your recommendations and the challenges that you've both spoken about. Is what does success look like to you? I've had professors and mentors of mine who are like, okay, great, I graduated college. And they're like, this isn't enough. I need to go to grad school. And I'm like, okay, I went to my grad school. This isn't enough. So to you, what does success look like to you? And what advice would you offer on that?
You know, success is subjective. It really depends on the individual. And my definition of success has changed, right? It's evolved. When I was younger, and of course, coming from an Asian family, so my parents are Indian, success was defined by education, you know, graduating, degrees, profession, that type of thing. So lawyer was at the top of the list. I wasn't good in science, so being a doctor was not going to be a thing. And so that was, you know, the measure of success. It was good grades. It was straight A's. That was what, you know, was instilled in me. Now, as a mature adult, things have changed where I don't necessarily view grades, you know, as a measure of success, or straight A's as, you know, something that is you know, defines success. So for me, moving through my career path, initially when I was in law school, success was getting the best job, you know, out of law school. And this is something that I didn't know. I didn't know how all this stuff worked, right? I was the first attorney. I was the first person in my family to go to law school. So I didn't know all of the, you know, the secrets to success. And I showed up at law school thinking that I'd be able to get good grades and get A's, just like I had managed to do in my previous educational career. And I realized that law school was a lot different. And my first semester, I started off in the part-time program. I switched to full-time after that first semester, but the first semester I got a C and 2 B minuses. So as you can imagine, like I almost had a heart attack when that happened. And so that was kind of one of the first turning points for me, although I knew in order to get those top jobs in law school, to get the most opportunities, I had to get good grades. So I did much better. I ended up getting a job at the top law firm. But when I went there, even though I was getting paid 6 figures as a, you know, and this was 20 years ago. So that's still, I mean, it's a lot of money now, but it was a lot of money then. And so I was like, okay, I did it. I checked all these things off of my box. And of course, my parents were so proud. And, but then it wasn't fulfilling to me. And so for me, success is enjoying the life that you live and doing things that are meaningful to you. For some people, it might be having a ton of money, but honestly, I can see in my 43 years that oh shoot, I shouldn't have told you that. That people with money still have problems. And so, not everything is what it seems. So I think it's really about defining what is happiness and what is success to you. What is it that you enjoy? What is it that gives you that drive to continue to go on and do more? So at this point for me right now, success is being able to do the work that I love, because now I get to actually do the type of work that I enjoy with families and business owners, and really being out in the community and doing things like this, being here with you guys. This is important to me. This is fulfilling to me. I enjoy this type of thing. Spending time with my family. So I know we talked a little bit about freedom, and that is something that you can't place a dollar value on. As an entrepreneur, there are a lot of hurdles. There are a lot of challenges. There are so many demands. There's so much stress. But on the other side of that, there's a lot of freedom and there's a lot of opportunity. So I think just defining what it is at each phase, it might change. But for me, it's things like having the freedom to do the things that I want to do, spend time with my kids, travel. That's something that I haven't had the opportunity to do because I've been in school and working and raising kids. So now that's something we're at a point in our lives, my husband and I, where we've made a commitment to travel more and make time for each other. So that's how I would define success.
Yeah. 100%. Success is dynamic. It's never static. It always changes throughout life. When I was in high school, success to me was just making the football team. And then when I was a sophomore, success was getting a starting role. And then it was, making all conference. And then after high school, it's like, well, what do I do now? Right. Now it's trying to go to honors college. And then you realize that you're not going to go to honors college. So it continually changes. And then once you go out into the entrepreneurial world, you realize that most people are kind of chasing a handful of ideas. They're chasing capital. They're trying to get rich. They're chasing quality of life. They just want to set a life to where they can hang out with their family, their significant other, and kind of just let it be. They're chasing legacy. They want to be remembered after they pass away as somebody who built something substantial or a person of good character. Or they want, I forget what the fourth one is. There's a fourth one, but generally you realize that throughout the different phases of your entrepreneurial journey, after you reach capital, which tends to be like the main one, you don't really, you kind of sit there and you realize, okay, now I've reached the end of my journey for chasing capital. Of course, after you make $1 million or $2 million or whatever it is, you could go make more. But once you make so much money, there's only so much really you could do with it before you kind of reach that end of fulfillment. But to me, success is more of leaving a legacy or power. Power is the fourth one. A lot of people want power. And power, it kind of has like a negative connotation, but it can be used in a positive manner as well, just depending on who sits in that power and kind of where you're directing it. But at the end of the day, I realize most people, they want to leave a legacy. Most people want to be a good person. They want to be remembered, and they want to do good for whatever business they practice in or the family that they leave behind at the end of the day. So out of those four, I think it's important to diagnose which one you're chasing and then try to implement it and direct your energy and attention to that.
So this is probably the most important question that we're going to talk about tonight as far as you guys are concerned, because there's a lot of people who spend their lives chasing someone else's success and it's not fulfilling because they get there and it's not what they thought it was. And you have the benefit of living in a society where we're all pretty close together. Adults who are living their lives currently. And that's one thing that I always try to do is study other human beings, see how they were doing in their version of success and see if I wanted that. And you should do that as well. I have a sister. I love her to death. She's a lawyer in Dallas, Texas for, I think, the number 6 law firm in the country. They do legal work for giant corporations like Facebook and MGM. And she works 80 fiscal hours a week. And she's done that every single week, except for her 2 vacation weeks a year for the last 7 years. Now, she is delighted by that. And God love her for it. But that's not my definition of success, right? To someone who sees that and that's their definition of success, she's a role model, right? And so your goal should be What is my success? What am I chasing? You don't want to be like a dog chasing a car and you get there and don't know what to do with it, right? Just bark at it. Like, find out what you want and then deliberately go after it. For me, success is unequivocally freedom. And most entrepreneurs feel that way. That's why you become an entrepreneur, because you had to wake up early one day and go to a building that you didn't own and have someone who was probably less intelligent than you tell you when to clock in and tell you when you could go to the bathroom and tell you when you could eat and tell you to put your phone down and tell you had to work on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that sucks, right? And you're sitting there just stewing on your way home, sitting on the bus or riding your bike or driving your 1991 Honda Accord. This is not a true story.
Hey, I still drive.
And you're furious because you're like, I'm smarter than them. I shouldn't have to go clock in and have them tell me when I can go to the bathroom. That's ridiculous. You know what? I'm done. I'm quitting and I'm starting my own business. That's what happens with most entrepreneurs. So freedom, the ability to wear what you want. They always say if you're wearing a suit in a room full of people with t-shirts on, you're the most important person in the room. But if you're wearing a t-shirt in a room full of people wearing suits, you're also the most important person in that room. And that's the goal. You want to be the guy or the girl wearing the t-shirt when everybody else is wearing suits. You want to go on vacation when you want. You want to go eat when you want. You want to wake up when you want. Gosh, I can't remember the last time I used an alarm clock for work, I should say. I had to use an alarm clock the other day, but it's for my kids. And it was terrible, and that's why I'm getting rid of them. No. So freedom, the ability to be self-reliant and not rely on someone else signing your paycheck. It's the most beautiful and pure thing in the world to make your own little taco stand or shirt company or whatever it is that you love doing and have someone else compensate you for it and then not rely on anybody else and just, as they say, throw them up to anybody who tells you when you can take your lunch break. That's success to me, is flexibility.
Nice.
Thank you all for sharing your success
Oh,
stories.
jeez. I'm sorry.
Hi, so can you guys see me up front?
Yep.
Okay, so we actually have some Zoom questions online as well. So our first one is, what words of motivation, not to say that all of this wasn't motivating, what words of motivation would you give someone if they're struggling? So general.
What words of motivation would we give someone that's struggling? So for me, what I tell myself when I'm struggling is get out of your own way. I think that sometimes we just create these barriers ourselves, and this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, as far as challenges. But I think, it really comes down to starting with yourself, how you view yourself, how you view life. I wake up every day and sometimes there are things that I don't want to do. For some of you that might end up following me or connecting with me on social media, you'll see that one of the things that I do is I'm participating now actually in a jump rope challenge. So basically for the year for 2022, my goal is to jump rope 300 days out of the year. So jump roping is actually something that I picked back up during the pandemic when I couldn't go to the gym and I couldn't go do hot yoga, all the things that I enjoyed. So now that it's getting colder, I just want to stay in bed. Like I don't want to get up and I don't want to work out and I don't want to jump rope and I don't want to go to this meeting or whatever it is. So instead of saying to myself that I have to do this or I have to go and do whatever, I say that I get to go work out. I get to go to this meeting. I get to go to this event because I think, Devan, you were talking about, there was a life-changing experience that you had. And until you can really appreciate that life and the present is so fragile and everything is so temporary that anything can change in an instant. Your health can change. We can get into an accident. And I'm not wishing that on anyone. I'm just stating that these are contingencies of life that we take for granted. So just to be grateful, I think, for those little things. That's how I overcome. When I'm having a challenge or struggling, I try to express gratitude, and I try to reframe or rephrase, my thinking.
Yeah, it's important. I guess it depends on what type of struggling you're referencing. But for this example, I'm going to assume it's like mentally struggling inside. And if that's the case, probably going to hate what I'm going to say, but read books. I had a very dark time in my life at one point that I actually had to get sober for many years, got kind of consumed within the industry of the strip, going out and partying and engaging in not the best behaviors. And during this time of kind of like self-isolation, I turned to books. I had to turn myself away from the internet. I felt like everything that I was subscribed to and following was surrounding, partying and raving and just like things that I was trying to escape from. And so I really just buried myself down into a bunch of books and read, I don't know, had to be 10 to 20 different books over the course of 2 years. And it really helped me define who I wanted to be and kind of reshape my perception of reality and who I wanted to be. So the most simplistic things, I think, when you're struggling is something that you need to focus on. And generally, you just need to cut yourself off of social media or just kind of restart your social media following. And if there's things that you're engaging in that's causing you're struggling or you're suffering, then eliminate it from your life and re-begin from there.
Okay, I feel like you're setting me up for another social media tirade, but I'll give it to you if you want. What I would tell someone who is struggling everyone will tell you this. I've had my struggles too. Everyone is struggling. Struggling is normal. And because of social media, we have dramatically forgotten that. Okay? I will not ask you to raise your hands, but raise your hands if you're struggling. Everybody's struggling. Have you been on the internet? Have you been on Twitter? Have you been on Reddit? Everybody is struggling. If you lived from 200 years ago or further back, if you wanted to be wealthy, you had to either be a king that was born into nobility or be a warlord that murdered everyone and took their stuff. Everybody else throughout all of human history, depending on how far back you think humans go, lived in poverty and oppression and tyranny. Struggling is normal. That is why success is so beautiful, because you remember what it's like to struggle. If your life was all rainbows and sunshines, then what would success be like? What would you do? You'd wake up every day and what, ride your horse on the equestrian track and have someone feed you frickin', I don't know, grapes? Like, life is good because life is hard. And when you overcome the hardship, then the good things are so much sweeter and so much better. And so don't feel weird because you're struggling. It's easy to look around and be like, man, I'm having a really rough time, and you're going through your stupid feed like that person's happy, that person's happy, that person's happy. If you had any idea what that person looked like 4 or 5 seconds before or after that, you ever seen someone take a picture like at a social media place and they're like, come on, just take the stupid picture. All right, give it back. You know what I mean? Like, you have no idea what's going on in their life. Everyone is struggling. That's normal. You're not weird, but that's what makes life so much better, is what I would say if they were here.
Something like Tim right there.
Definitely really good advice. So we'll go ahead and ask one more question, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up and give people time to network. So does anyone here have a question? Don't be shy. Anyone?
There were other ones, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. He's gonna whip out.
Look this up.
All the way back in the audience.
Were there any books that were really special to you or that you would recommend that helped change your mindset?
Yeah, so there's a few. So the first one I read out of college was actually called Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. She's a very popular artist. It just discusses how to kind of observe your own mind. That was a good one for me. And then The Alchemist is a really good one as well. It's a very good classic that just kind of teaches you the different meanings of life and how to go through it. And then from an entrepreneurial book, one that really inspired me is called 0 to 1. Which is by Peter Thiel. It's kind of about the idea of creating technologies that uplift society and pushes it in a better direction. So like, for an example, like electricity was 0 to 1. There's no electricity, then you have 1, and then that's kind of what built the internet, right? Because now you have power and different things like that. But I think Power of Now is probably the best one. And actually one more. My favorite book was Shoe Dog, which is actually Phil Knight's book, the guy who created Nike. He has a very hard and inspirational story of trying to push for success and how he basically built Nike on, I don't want to give it the story away too much now that I realize it, but he took a long time to actually bank a profit, and it wasn't until way later in his life, and he just talks about a lot of the appreciations that he did along his journey and along his struggle. It's a very, very good book. You're welcome.
So my favorite book of all time, it's a finance book. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon, and it fundamentally changed my life. It's not long. It's short little parables. I do a seminar almost entirely on The Richest Man in Babylon. It absolutely, from the age of 16, fundamentally changed my life. I'm 37. I've had 21 years of awesome advice from The Richest Man in Babylon. So go read that book, okay? It's really short. But outside of the finance realm, there's a book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. There's a lot of nerdy stuff in there that's not that wasn't helpful, but there's a lot of like really cool entrepreneurial thoughts and changes the way that you see your job. One of the reasons that I started my company was in the 4-Hour Workweek. He talks about his buddy who was a lawyer in San Diego and hated his job. And he was like, I hate my job. This is stupid. And he's like, well, what would you rather do? He said, I'd rather go down to Brazil and start a surf company and teach people how to surf. And he's like, well, why don't you do that? He said, well, because I got a job. I can't quit my job. And he said, listen, how long would it take you if your company failed in Brazil to come back and get your exact same job? He said, maybe 5 years. I said, okay, so then go do it. And if it fails, you lose 5 years, but at least you know, and go back and get your stupid job back. And that's one thing that changed my mentality when I came time to start my company was, if this doesn't work, I have the skills that I can just go get my job back again. So, and then one that I read really early was Making Friends and Influencing People, or Winning Friends and Influencing People by Carnegie. It teaches you a lot to win friends. How to win friends. I read it like 20 years ago. But it teaches you like how people think and how to like, I don't want to say how to manipulate people, but it teaches you how to manipulate people. It teaches you that we're a lot more alike than we are different. And there are a couple cheat codes that you can use, like eye contact and saying people's names and being animated that have also fundamentally changed my life.
The 4-Hour Workweek's by Tim Ferriss. So a lot of people might know him.
So the last couple of books that I've read are actually by the same author, and I can't remember his last name, but I believe his first name is Patrick. One of them is The Dysfunctions of a Team, which I don't know. Have you read that one? Okay. So this is one that I read actually before I started my law firm when I was the general counsel of a financial services company. And it was interesting because when I read it then, it helped me to understand how people kind of work together and like different personalities and how things can be really dysfunctional, but how you can kind of hone in on really being the best team and collaborative and, productive. So I reread that recently because now having my own firm and seeing as we're growing, the different dynamics and personalities and relationships that have, developed with our team. I have a different perspective on it now, reading it more recently. And then I read the other book that I read by the same author is The 6 Working Geniuses, I think is the title of it. And it kind of goes along the same lines of there's these different types of gifts that we each have, different kind of categories, and being able to understand who we are. So the idea is that we're strong in like 2 of the geniuses. Like we have 2 main gifts or kind of powers as far as our, some of our abilities. And then there's 2 other geniuses that we are competent in. We can do them, but we don't necessarily like to do that particular thing. And then there's 2 that we actually just despise. And so it's about really making sure that we're in our geniuses, our working geniuses, our heightened geniuses. That's how we are able to maximize our productivity, our happiness, how we deal with others. So those are 2 that recently have come to mind. And one other book that I liked, and I liked the books, most of the books that you guys mentioned. Another book that I read a few years ago when I was probably 2 years into my law practice. And my husband and I went to this conference, and it was for lawyers specifically. It wasn't even a conference. It was like a retreat. So it was a small group of us, probably 12 people, and it was called C4. And the 4 C's, I'm not going to remember what they were, but they're like communication, connection, some other thing related to those two things. And I learned how to better connect with people in my personal relationships and professionally, because as a lawyer, they don't teach you how to be personable and how to gain rapport or build rapport with clients. And I think that that's where a lot of people in my industry, probably yours too, especially, where it's very transactional and there's no relationship really behind it. And I found that that's what people are looking for. They're looking to work with people that are not just smart and competent and have all the accolades and the education, but people that they like. So that's how, I've been able to kind of hone into, my personality and things like that. So the book that was recommended after I went to that retreat, it's called Getting Real. And I think the author's name is escaping me now. It's been a few years, Elizabeth something. But if you connect with me, I'll give you guys my contact information. I'll send you the info on that or any other info that you want. I'm happy to provide. So I'll give you, do you want me to, should I give it now or? Okay, so my email is usually the best way to connect with me if you want. So Shane, it's SHANE at Young, so YOUNG, law, LAWNV.com. So Shane at younglawNV.com. And then you can also connect with me on social media. My personal Instagram is Shane Jasmine. So just my first and middle name, Shane Jasmine, or Young Law Group is my law firm. So either way, if you shoot me a message, email, whatever, we can connect.
Ooh. Read a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
Every successful person does it. Is there any more questions or
Let's give a big round of applause to all of our panelists.
For you guys to meet them and come up and shake their hand and grab their contact information if you want it. But before we do that, Victoria and I just want to thank everyone for coming. This was a collaborative effort between the business school and liberal arts, and just big thanks to our panelists who were awesome. So we have some little gifts for you.
Oh.
Oh, you're not
Shane.
That's for you.
Oh, thank you. Special. Yeah, I guess I could just say, if anyone wants to connect with me, I'm pretty easy. I'm on YouTube, podcast, Twitter, Instagram. It's Jake, Jake. Last name is Gallen, Gallen. You can add me on any social media. My podcast and YouTube content's on YouTube. The podcast is called Jake Gallen Podcast. It's all about crypto now, but the first 170 episodes are all entrepreneurs from Las Vegas. There's some professors that are here. We've had casino hosts, all kinds of interesting personalities from there. And then on social media, reach out. I'm happy to help with any questions, meet up, whatever it is. Happy to help.
Best way to get a hold of me is probably LinkedIn. I don't have a podcast yet. But
You have social media though.
Yes, I do. It's for business. It's for business only. So it's funny. I have a Facebook that's for my business, and people try to say things to me. It's not business related. I'm not. But my first name is Devan, Devan. Out of my mom. I don't know. That's how girls in Europe spell it. I think so. My last name is Wyson, Wyson. So you can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Awesome. And then before we announce the scholarship winners, we also want to say thanks to our moderators.
Way to go.
Let's go. Killed it.
Good
You guys
job.
are so good.